Welcome to another edition of the McAnulty Method, where financial expert Frank McAnulty and Colin Sorrells will be sharing their expertise and wisdom with us so that we might be a little bit smarter financially. Welcome, guys. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Bill.
I understand we have a fascinating topic today, and one that certainly my adult children should be listening to as well, and that is the cost of using Uber versus the cost of driving. I'm anxious to hear what you guys have to say on this. So, Frank, do you want to start us off?
Well, I'll start us off, but I'm gonna punt to Colin real quick here because Bill, since we're about the same age, we don't use Uber much, do we? I mean, I use it now and then when I fly somewhere and need to get to a meeting or something and don't want to rent a car, but it's not the first thing I think of when I do something. So, Colin, what's your feelings on this topic?
Well, so the whole idea of Uber, I think, for young adults comes from, buying a car can be expensive. We're in a state like California where gas costs are going through the roof, high insurance, there's all these costs. If you're in a big city, parking. And so it starts to feel like this idea of, well, I only pay when I actually need to go somewhere. And is that cheaper than actually owning a car, right? And we had a conversation a couple months, maybe a month, 2 months ago now about driving gas powered versus electric and all of that. And I think we determined that it was roughly $10,000 a year is what it costs you to drive a car, standard car. So I went online, and we'll put the link in the description. An article from 2 years ago on CNBC was looking at this exact thing. What are people paying for their Uber rides? Spawned by, they met a lady who was paying $453 a month in New York for Uber, which sounds pretty pricey, but let me share the screen here. Okay. Alrighty, so these were all taken from the article, and I sort of split it up, big city, small city, so you got your LAs, your Seattles, your Chicagos, and they determined this is the monthly cost. Based on about 50,000 people across all these cities that are spending on Uber. And then we multiplied that out to your sort of annual cost. Now, the first thing that stood out to me, and I'll give it back to you, Frank, to take a look and give your thoughts, is none of these are very close to what I imagine. You probably spend more than this in a year just on gas in most of these places. But the other thing I noticed is this monthly cost seems pretty low compared to the lady who was spending $453 a month. So I'll give it to you, Frank, to give your thoughts, and then we'll play around with it a bit.
Well, that's exactly what I was looking at. I looked at the numbers here and I go, wait, $64 a month in Los Angeles. Okay, that's maybe two trips, two fairly short trips, and Uber, Lyft, and the others have all gone way up in the last 2 years. So yeah, I'm not. I agree with you, Colin. It's a little hard to figure out, where they came up with those numbers. But I think it goes back to everybody's different. At one time I worked in Brentwood here on the west side of Los Angeles, and I lived 2 blocks away. So theoretically, I didn't need a car during the week. I walked to work, and quite honestly, I left my car in the office building. Um, they were paying for parking, so why not keep a car there? Uber and Lyft didn't exist at that time. You would have had to call the taxi. We were just attacked by a cat there. Um, but so yeah, at that time it would have been like, okay, I don't really need to go anywhere. How much do I need a car? If there's something convenient like there is now, would it have been better? I personally, in my mind, Uber and Lyft's greatest savings are in keeping people from getting pulled over for drunk driving. You know, it unfortunately, based on people I know, it does cost you $10,000 to get pulled over for drunk driving.
Well,
Um,
so I was thinking about $10,000 a year. If we're saying that's what the cost of owning and driving and maintaining your own vehicle is what, a little over $800 a month?
right.
So it seems, at least in my opinion, even if the prices have gone up, fairly reasonable to assume that if you're only doing the Uber to and from where you need to go, 800 might be a little tough to get to.
Well, it like once again, it depends on how far you're going. You know, for instance, there's no way you could have taken an Uber from where you lived to go to school. And
2 hours, probably not, each way.
well, you could have, but it would have cost you,
Right.
I don't know how much, $200 a trip to do it.
Yeah.
And also let's think about it. If you're taking an Uber, are you by yourself most of the time?
Well, that's, I don't know. I don't use Uber.
But the people
Bad.
I know do it, that use it when they're going out. So there'll be at least two, maybe four. Once it's all of these things come down to the person. Yes, owning a car is very expensive. Like you said, $10,000 a year is a lot of money. And even people I knew lived in New York back before this Uber was around. You took a cab everywhere if you needed to, or you walked, or you took the subway. And sometimes when I'd go back there to visit, if we were going to drive out of town for the weekend, you rent a car because it was just way too expensive to have a car in New York. Like you said, parking in LA's for the most part not a nightmare, depending on where you live. But in New York, yeah, you're looking at probably $1,000 a month for parking. So,
Well, that brought me to thinking, the first thought is, okay, driving your own car. But the second thought, you think of, especially you talked about situation, if you're in one of these major cities, public transportation. So that was the next step of what I wanted to look at was, what does public transportation cost people? And this is from a little more recently, but you can see based on the numbers that public transportation actually in big cities can be more expensive than the Uber, although maybe that has changed. But let's, for the argument, right, they found a lady who was spending $453 on Uber in New York City, which
Right.
has a great public transportation system. I assume. Never been. Okay, so let's say she's spending $453 a month, which is about $5,000 a year, and as opposed to about $2,000 in public transportation. So that's $3,562. And I think what we need to start doing with these when we're talking about saving money is how much that saved money would actually help you in the long run. Which is why we're going to do something similar to what we did a couple weeks ago. You get 7% in the market after tax, and you're just putting that $3,000 that you're saving away every year. It's not quite $1 million, but 3/4 ain't bad either after 40 years.
now it's amazing how much time helps you, especially if you're consistent with putting the money away. No, you're absolutely right. This is where you make the difference in these little things.
And
Yeah,
that's, thinking about things, I think getting people to think about the true cost of something is not just what you actually saved, it's what you could use that money to make more money with.
Right, because the cost of basically not taking public transportation in New York cost this lady over 40 years, $760,000. You're right. And no one really looks at it that way.
Oh, the one caveat is that they need to be listening to you guys so they'll know to put that money somewhere where it's going to help them instead of just either in the cookie jar or spending it on something else. Gets back to saving.
That's true. You can always spend money. All we have to do is look at any professional athlete, and no matter how much they make, they can spend it.
All right. So I want to get a quick vote here. Uber versus car. Frank, which way do you go?
Well, I live in Long Beach, where there's very bad public transportation for the most part to get to where I need to go. So I got to have my own car because I'm going somewhere every day, and Uber would cost me a whole lot more than my Prius to drive.
All right. Colin, what about you?
No, I like that. I think look at your situation. You know, especially if you're on the East Coast or Northwest, Seattle's got a great public transportation system. If you're in a city like that and you take the buses everywhere, look at what you're spending on Uber versus what it would cost you.
All right. So there it is. I guess once again, it comes down to what's your situation and take a good look at it and do what's the smartest.
Right. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different situation. The only thing that doesn't change between people is that time, when you're young, time is your friend. The more money you put away early, the happier you're going to be later.
All right. Well, time is no longer our friend because we're out of it. But so we will end this edition of the McAnulty Method and join us again the next time. We've got some more exciting stuff coming up.